Hello there, Ray here, and today I will be showing you a wireless home teleport. This allows you to actually teleport from any location within Minecraft back to your spawn point. So let's say you're out exploring and you travel a long distance and now you're pretty far away from your spawn point and you really just don't want to walk all the way home. Maybe you're collecting resources, maybe you're just checking out different structures, and you really just don't want to kill yourself either to get home. Now by using this home teleporting device, you can actually get teleported all the way back home. Now you can see here I'm at 20 million in the Nether, so that's pretty far away from spawn, which is around 0, 0. Now all you have to do to activate the device is to relog a number of times, and this is determined by the machine you set up ahead of time. Now I set this machine up to actually teleport me home after one relog, so now I just relog. Now I just have to wait a little while and the machine will activate and actually send me home. So there it is, I got teleported back to 0, 0. I'm still here in the Nether dimension. Now if I just go over into through the Nether portal here, I'll get put over into the overworld, and this is where my spawn point is right here at 0, 0. So I just traveled a huge distance easily just by using this home teleporting device. I had this idea a couple years ago while building the Sand City here. The way that works is actually pretty simple. I'm here in the spawn chunks, and these blue and purple squares are the entity processing chunks of spawn chunks, and the red ones are the lazy processing chunks. And here I just have another portal, and this is just a device which allows me to see in chat if this chunk is being loaded as an entity processing chunk with an armor stand, or if it's just being loaded as a lazy processing chunk, which allows redstone to activate these two command blocks here. So these will always be on as long as the spawn chunks are loaded. Now over in the Nether side, I also have some chunk loaders which are loading this portal. So anything that would happen to go through this portal would load this chunk, and then I got chunk loaders which will load a 5x5 area, which will turn the center chunk into a entity processing chunk. I also have some detectors on this side which will just tell me if the Nether is being loaded as an entity processing chunk or a lazy processing chunk. Now the way that this actually works is that you first start out in the Nether and you'll be in survival, and you actually just sit in the Nether portal, and right before you get teleported away you will shoot an ender pearl up into the air. Now once you leave the Nether, over on the side you can see that right here where it says Nether Hub, NH stands for Nether Hub, they start to disappear. Now there is no more signs that the Nether is being loaded because the Nether actually unloads once the player leaves the Nether. Now that ender pearl got stuck over there, it got frozen because it got unloaded by the game, and it's just sitting over there. So since the ender pearl is held up in the Nether dimension, it will only allow us to be teleported if we're in the Nether dimension ourselves. So now all we have to do is have a clock which will load the Nether side when we want it to. So what we have here is just some cobwebs, and we'll just have an item sitting on top of these cobwebs, and it'll slowly make its way through these cobwebs and fall into the water stream and be sent into this Nether portal. Now these are in spawn chunks which are loaded as long as the player is over here in the overworld itself, or if you have a machine which is always loading your spawn chunks. The way it's set up now, there's nothing loading the spawn chunks, so as soon as I go over into the Nether dimension, the spawn chunks themselves will freeze after 1 minute. So this item which is falling through the cobwebs will freeze, and only when I actually reload the game will the spawn chunks reload for 1 minute, even if I'm not actually in the overworld. So now I just have to get over into the Nether dimension without loading the ender pearl that's over there. Now I also have to be over the Nether dimension because the ender pearl will not teleport me unless I'm in the same dimension as the ender pearl is, which is in the Nether dimension. And I need to get out of the overworld, so therefore I'm not loading the spawn chunks which are allowing this item to fall. So I travel a ways out so that when I go through this Nether portal I will not load the ender pearl, and the distance you have to travel out is determined by your render distance, because when you come through here in the Nether you don't want to load the ender pearl. So the ender pearl is actually over there by the other Nether portal. Now once you're in the Nether, you can travel off and go do your exploring or whatever you want to do, and the ender pearl will be safely stored over there. And you can see over here in the chat that the signs that show that the world, so this one right here, WSP, stands for world spawn point. You can see that it will eventually die off after 1 minute, so that the entity part will die off, and this means that the item which is falling through the cobwebs will also freeze so that it won't fall through. So now you can see right here the overworld or the spawn chunks is no longer entity processing chunks, it's now just a lazy processing chunk right here. You can see that just a W, a small, means it is a lazy processing chunk. It's no longer entity processing chunk. So now the item that is falling through the cobwebs will just sit there, and now all you have to do is just relog and this will cause the game to reload the spawn chunks. So if I just relog again, go out and go back in again, and this will actually allow the spawn chunks to reload again. So now if we check our indicator over here, you can see that world spawn point is being loaded as a lazy processing chunk, as also as a entity processing chunk right here. So this means that once we have reloaded the spawn chunks, the item starts continually falling through the cobwebs, and by allowing there to be enough cobwebs, you can decide if you want to allow it so that you can relog once, or if you can relog 3 times. You do gotta remember that your items will despawn after 5 minutes, so if you do have a long period of time which you want to relog, then you will probably want to put a dispenser in or a dropper which will drop the item into the cobwebs to start with. And after relogging that number of times, this chunk here will be loaded as an entity process chunk, and your ender pearl will fall, and you'll get teleported here since you'll also be in the same dimension as the ender pearl. If you would like to know more about how to load the nether dimension without a player, I will link in the description where I did a separate video explaining just that. Now when setting up your cobwebs, it takes the item about 30 seconds to travel through one cobweb, so you can determine about how many cobwebs you want to have stacked up. And every time you relog and you reload the overworld, it will stay about loaded for about 30 seconds or so. So you want to figure out how many times you need to reload by using those figures. Now you can also do this for the end dimension as well. All you have to do is actually go over and load your entrance end portal. So here are spawn chunks. We just load out to our entrance end portal, and then we make the entrance end portal a entity processing chunk as well by loading a 5x5 area around the entrance end portal. Now we can also come along and then put a item through this cobwebs. Just like the nether portals, after a time it will fall into this portal here. Now if we go over into end dimension ourselves, we will be over here. Now right here is the obsidian platform that you spawned at, and it also loaded a 5x5 area around this obsidian platform so that any item that comes through here will load the center chunk as an entity processing chunk. Now if you want to know more about how to load the end dimension without a player, I also did a video explaining how you can actually load the end dimension without players, and I'll link that in the description as well. But once this is loaded as an entity processing chunk, that means the ender pearl will be able to fall. So now if we can come up here and we can come right up to this gateway portal, which is also in the same chunk here, and what we can do is do the same thing where we throw an ender pearl up in the air, then we can throw an ender pearl through the gateway portal. This is the entrance gateway portal. And then by doing this, we will have the ender pearl up in the air. And then by relogging, we will unload this obsidian platform chunk, and this ender pearl will be stuck here, and will still be in the same dimension. We'll be in the end dimension, but we'll be out at the far islands. So what we do is throw ender pearl skin survival, throw ender pearl up in the air, throw ender pearl through the entrance gateway portal. Then by relogging, we will unload the obsidian platform chunk, which also includes ender pearl. So now we're out here at the far islands, and if we look at the words over here, we can see that spawn chunks loaded as well as the entrance end portal, but the obsidian platform is not loaded. That's good, that means the ender pearl is frozen there. So now from here we can actually just travel around, go exploring, collect chorus fruit, go to end cities. Don't really matter what you do. You can go out as far as you want, and if you do want to get back to home, all you have to do is relog a couple of times. You can see that the chunks are already unloading again. So now by relogging, we will reactivate it. So you can see that the obsidian platform is loaded. That's what the OP stands for. And our ender pearl fell down from the sky since this platform was chunk loaded as an entity processing chunk, and that allowed our ender pearl to fall and to teleport us from the far islands all the way back here to our obsidian platform. And then from here we can easily get back to our spawn. So it's actually really easy to use this to actually travel a large distance without having much hassle at all. So I showed how you can use this in the nether dimension as well as the end dimension. Now you can actually do a similar thing in the overworld, except it's a little bit different. Since if you're in the overworld yourself, you're also causing the spawn chunks to be loaded, and therefore just by relogging will not cause anything to actually happen with the spawn chunks that's particularly special. But the way that you can actually have the player be teleported back to spawn by using a similar method is just by having a clock which will count down. After a certain amount of time, it will load a chunk which is normally not loaded, and this will allow your ender pearl to fall down. And so what I have right here is spawn chunks, and these are the entity processing chunks, and these are the lazy processing chunks of spawn. And right here is where you actually send your ender pearl up in the air. This is a lazy processing chunk, and then you leave via the Nether portal, which will allow this chunk to unload as an entity processing chunk because the player will no longer be here. Now the Ender Pearl will be frozen here, and after a set amount of time, we have a clock here, and the clock will slowly tick down, and it will place items over here, and when the signal strength gets long enough, it will come over here and unpower this torch. Now currently, this line is being powered by redstone, and when the redstone is powering these hoppers, the hoppers themselves are trying to chunk load these next chunks over here, but when they're powered, they're not currently actually chunk loading anything over there. But once they get unpowered, then they will be able to chunk load these next set of 5 chunks over here, and this will allow this chunk here to become entity processing chunk, which will allow your Ender Pearl to fall from the sky. Now this method is not as like a redstone or a wireless signal like the other method where you can actually do it whenever you want. Here you're determined by this time, so if you want to, you can set the timer to be, let's say, like 1 week of Minecraft days, and then it'll send you back home. If you want to, you can send the time to be longer, and then when you want to go home, you can just AFK. Now to actually get this started, what you would want to do is just do the same thing where you stand in another portal and you face upwards, and right before you teleport, you throw an Ender Pearl up in the air, and once you come out of another portal, you'll see that in the chat, the entity processing chunks of spawn chunks, you can see that there is no signal that the Ender Pearl is actually being loaded as an entity processing chunk. That means it's safe to go. So now once you're in the Nether, you can travel out wherever you want to, and then you can travel back into a different Nether portal. So let's say I'm here. Now I just want to travel, there's another portal over here. I can actually travel out into this Nether portal, and then from here I can go back into the overworld. Now this will load the overworld, and it'll actually be loading that timer, which will allow it to count down, and then after a set amount of time it'll teleport me back. But this way you can actually get teleported back, and you don't actually have to travel back. So using this method where you log out of the world and you log back in, this reloads the overworld, only works in single player, so it does not work in multiplayer. So if you want to do a similar thing in multiplayer, you can use the clock method, and you can do this for the overworld, and you can also use this in the end in the Nether as well if you want to. I have provided the world download for this world so that you can check it out in the description if you would like to try to replicate this in your own world. So there you have it, guys, a wireless home teleport. So if you found this interesting, show me the like. If you'd like to see more contraptions like this in the future, subscribe and don't forget to comment. Bye bye.